My name is Jeremy, this is Red Beans Recording, and today we're going to be talking with Mathias Kettner, the man behind the Sinfonion, the musical group Der Mann mit der Maschine, and most recently, the Droid ecosystem. Mathias calls Droid a universal CV processor. With the Droid master module, you have 8 CV ins and outs that can create and process CV in a wild variety of ways. And through text files that you load onto an SD card, you can tell it exactly what you want it to do. We'll be diving into Mathias's history with Eurorack and music. We'll be talking about live performance with Eurorack, and we'll be talking about the Droid system, what it can do for you now, and some of the cool stuff he has coming up. So sit back, join us as we talk with Mathias Kettner of Der Mann mit der Maschine about Droid. Hello. How are you? Nice to have you on. Why don't you tell us what your name is and I guess what you do?
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for having me here. My name is Mathias Kettner. I'm from Germany. I'm building Eurorack modules. And I'm also a musician. I started playing jazz as a child already, but I switched over to modular a couple years ago. And now I'm playing live concerts, make videos, stuff like that.
What led you from the transition from jazz music into doing stuff with modular?
The actual transition was not from jazz to modular, but from saxophone to modular. So I played the saxophone for about 3 decades, and I detected modular a couple of years ago. I wanted to solve a problem. You know, I told you I made jazz. Now I wanted to force jazz on modular. That's very difficult because you want not only scales, but you want chord changes. And I wanted to play with multiple voices. So I was looking for a multi-channel quantizer. I actually ordered the ADAC 4-channel quantizer, or I wanted to order it, but it was not available. And people said it has too many
bucks. I'm just going to make my own.
Yeah, then I came up with a couple of ideas to make more jazz-like approach to harmony and modular. And the Sinfonion is the idea. The main difference to a normal quantizer is that it quantizes in 2 steps. In the first step, it quantizes to a scale, for example, C minor. And as a second step, from that scale, you can pick out certain notes for each voice. So, for example, the bass voice, you allow just the root note in the 5th, and for the melody voice, a couple of more notes. Yeah, you can play in a polyphonic patch, but not every voice plays the same, obviously.
Yeah, that's a really, really clever way to applying the concept of note weighting to different voices so that they present in the arrangement as you want them to. And that little patch that you made me on Droid does something not dissimilar, and it's become... I mean, I've been recording tons of live music with it now, like tons of jams with it, and it's going to be part of a live set that I'm doing later for Ned Rush's channel. It's just really, really intuitive to get music out of it, which is really, really pleasant and really, really fun. And that's just a mini version, you know? It's not even the big boy.
Yeah, it's a bit a different approach. You know, the ideas in the Droid, you can say the Droid contains a kind of mini Sinfonion, and in fact, the circuit is called Minifonion. But of course, you don't have this nicely layouted playing interface of the Sinfonion, but you have all of the features and you have the total flexibility. You can make as many channels as you want. You can combine everything like you want. The quantization is in your patch. It's done within the module, not externally. So it gives you lots of flexibility to basically create your own instrument.
Was the Sinfonion your first module? And if not, what made you jump from like being interested in Eurorack and using it as a musician to like designing modules? Because that's a pretty big step. Some people joke that it's like it is the thing that people after they've been doing Eurorack for a while do. It's like they either sell their whole system or they start making their own modules. So it's kind of funny that so what led you to do that? I mean, you said you were trying to solve a problem. Was the Sinfonion your first module?
No,
were you messing around before that?
It was actually the second module. The first one was a trigger delay because I wanted to try something with phasing. You know, one melody, for example, playing 32 notes and another one 33 notes, and they meet again at the end. And I tried that to do with analog, but I'm not really a good electronic. So I switched over to using a microprocessor, and then I learned to know Jason Lim from Instru on the Super Booth. He created the module for me. It's called Tic Tac, but it was never released.
So you got your taste with the Tic Tac. That's a lot different than the Sinfonion. I mean, that's a big jump. So like, I know that you worked with ACL on the Sinfonion. What was that process like? And how did it, just real quick, like, you don't have to get super into it, but I mean, I'm curious how it went from an idea to something, this Cadillac of quantizers that like it's just beautiful. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so I wanted to play jazz. I wanted to play a complete jazz band live with a modular. So I needed multiple voices and I needed better control over the actual notes. I wanted to introduce randomness. Improvisation and randomness is very, very near. Yeah, because if you want to make a live performance with a polyphonic patch and want to improvise, I want improvisation. I'm a jazz musician. I am used to improvise melody with the saxophone. So sequencing is not an option for me to sequence all of the melodies. So if you don't want to sequence, you need some randomness and you want to squeeze that into music. So you need a quantizer. At least I thought it was a good idea. So I breadboarded. I started with 4 channels and then I added 4 more channels to make for a chord generator.
You got to have your 7th chords. You can't have jazz without 7th chords. It's impossible.
Yeah, and jazz chords are not usually triads or root 3 5 7, but there you have completely different voicings. For example, the bass plays the root note, and the piano player plays upper structures like just the 3rd, the 9, and the 11th, or whatever you like to give these interesting timbres. Let's say you have a C minor scale. It consists of 7 notes. Most scales consist of 7 notes. And every combination of these 7 notes is allowed and can sound interesting. That was the idea of the chord generator from the Sinfonion. So because I knew a couple of other chord generators in Eurorack, and all are limited to root, 3rd, 5th, or maybe 7th. And that's, I think it's a bit boring and not very musical. But there's another second problem that I wanted to tackle because I wanted to, at the first step, I wanted to try to combine several quantizers. For making a polyphonic patch, you combine quantizers, maybe a sequencer, maybe a chord generator. Now comes a problem, and a very big problem, that's almost not solvable with separate modules. You want to have chord changes.
Yeah.
You want to go from C minor to A flat major, for example, and all of these modules should do the same chord progression, and that's almost impossible.
Polyphony in general in Eurorack is such a difficult thing to get right, and you're absolutely right. It's the harmonic changing element of that's almost impossible to get correct. Like it's just not part of the system really, and that's fine. I mean, like you can do a lot with sort of mono polyphony in a lot of interesting ways, but it's really cool. It's really cool that you found a way to do this. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, so with the Sinfonion, I basically solved the problem for me, and I added this chord
solved
progression.
It for other people too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen that module in some really impressive setups, including the Sebastian Leisure. He was using that, and you could hear it. You could hear the way that it pushes. The way that he uses harmony and harmonic structure in his mixes. He's very melodic in his stuff. So it's like, it's really, really cool to see it directly being used in that context, in a live context with such great results.
He even copied my system with the ribbon controller. Basically copied and asked me how I made this with the ribbon controller, because I used the Sinfonion to quantize the ribbon controller into melodies, and I used the Droid to quantize it into rhythm.
That's what he was doing with his ribbon controller. I actually did a video about that video, trying to figure out what some of the sounds he was doing was, and I was making fun of him because he kept on playing with the ribbon controller, and I thought he was controlling the LED lights around his system. So now we have closure. We know exactly what he was actually doing. That's a lot better. I was kind of giving him a hard time because he was like just.
I mean, it's fun, yeah. With the ribbon controller, as you can see in the clips that I've made for you, I guess I've built my saxophone with it.
Either with your first design or with the Sinfonion, what were some of or just getting started with making modules, what were some of the things that you would consider sort of a challenge or a triumph? I mean, there's got to be things along the way that are like either just sort of, I'm going to beat my head against this for a week before I get it right, or wow, that works really, really, really well.
I think I got started with this because I'm very naive, and I think I can do everything. So I really thought I would create my own PCB, and already started with Eagle. But boy, this is so deep, making really good electronics. So I learned fast that it's better not to try this for me. I think I could learn it probably if I work a couple of years on that. But for me, that's a waste of time, because when I see how fast JSON is, for example, or the Droid was designed, actually the hardware, by Vladimir Pantelic.
VPME?
Yeah, VPME.
Oh shit! Excuse me. I'm a huge fan. The QD was one of my first modules ever, and it has been something that I constantly recommend to people. It's a marvel of design and use. Like it's so great.
Yeah, and we work together. He's also German. He's from Darmstadt, and he made the electronics for me.
Pass along my kudos. I really appreciate his work.
He's also a very nice guy and very helpful. And I don't know anyone who does better digital electronics for Eurorack than him.
Yeah, the QD is just like, you start sitting down with it and realizing like how much is packed into it and how it's accessed, and you're like, damn, this is crazy. Like it's like a little Swiss Army knife of stuff.
So I learned very fast that making PCBs is not for me, but I, for the Sinfonion, nevertheless, I did a complete breadboard prototype.
Oh my gosh.
Of the module just without the buttons. The buttons, I made a simulation program on a PC.
Okay.
Where I can
so you had it
hooked
up to the breadboard that you could then like interact with the mouse.
I wrote some software on the microcontroller that talked via serial interface with the PC, so I could click around. I could design different versions of the faceplate and so on.
I mean, that's pretty rad, honestly. That's a great way to do it. That seems really smart.
I was really enthusiastic to have the first actual build in my hands. And that was at that time done by Jason Lim from It's True.
Is there a black and gold faceplate out there for it? I feel like I may have seen that.
You can see the modular grid and...
Yeah, okay. It's very fetching in black and gold. But yeah, I mean, eventually you went with a different manufacturer.
Yeah, I went because ACL is a German company and has, for a couple of reasons, I grouped together with ACL for the production of the Sinfonion. And we made also another update of the hardware. We made it a bit bigger, added a couple more buttons to make it more consistent. And yeah, that was the way to bring out the first module. But the way it was very long and painful. You know, this breadboard prototype where we have 1,000 cables, then you get lots of instabilities. You don't have a stable ground, for example, and for pitch accuracy, every millivolt is crucial.
Yeah, and you're dealing with a quantizer, so it's like that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
like, just a little bit.
First, I thought it's just important to have a good DAC, so a good digital audio converter to create precise voltages for the pitches.
Okay.
Of course, that's important, but later I learned that it's also very important to get the other way around. If you quantize something, you need very precise and stable AD converters.
Oh.
First, you might think it doesn't matter the precision because you quantize it anyway.
Right.
But if it's unprecise and you're getting jitter, then it's getting unstable. For example, every time your sequencer runs one round, you get a different node.
Yeah.
Or the node is jumping up and down. Like you can see in some quantizers.
I have had that experience, unfortunately. It's one of the more frustrating things when you're like, this is literally what this is built to do. What is happening?
Like, you cannot fix this in software.
Yeah.
You really need a good converter. And for the Sinfonion, after the problems, we looked for the best converters money can buy. It's actually one chip that costs about $20, just one single chip, and that's really absolutely stable. It ranges from -10 to +10 volts, and I stuck to that chip also for the Droid because it's so reliable, it's so precise. It doesn't need any additional circuitry, so it's directly wired to the jack, and so that's the reason why it's very precise.
One thing I have noticed about your approach to Droid, just in the little bit that I've been talking to you, is there is a level of quality to it every step of the way that's very impressive. I mean, I remember when you showed me the boxes that you ordered for them. Like you don't mess around when it comes to quality components all the way from inside to outside, which is cool. I really like that. I mean, it seems that you take a lot of pride in what you're doing.
You know, I'm much about pitch information. Also in the Droid, there's some circuits about perfect tuning. A perfect intonation, you know, where you automatically can get chords without beating. And for that, you need a really precise voltages. And then you have this calibration circuit in the Droid where you can calibrate your oscillators to track over, let's say, 8 octaves. there you need really good hardware, and then you can. There's no point in making expensive hardware. The point is in making hardware where you can do something other can't.
And so, also I think the reliability aspect is really important. I mean, like there's nothing worse than realizing that you have to limit a certain voice or a certain sequencer's interaction with that voice to a certain like range because it's just not stable outside that range. And I've run into that a lot, and it's really, really frustrating. It's like, why is this happening? Like, why? Or when you go to tune something and like you realize like that, oh, it's great, it's in tune here, and then you pump everything up an octave or two, and like all of a sudden the tuning's all drifted. It's terrible. Yeah, it's really bad. But hey, it's modular. Like, yeah, but it's part of the fun. Yeah, bringing this into the actual like high stakes realm of playing live is a completely different animal. And actually, that's a good segue. I mean, you mentioned in our correspondence that Colin Benders is a pretty big fan of the Sinfonion, and if anyone is a good representative for modular as music that can be performed live, he's one of them. So I mean, his sort of endorsement of this thing as a reliable and performative piece of gear is pretty cool.
Yeah, and in German we have a very famous band. It's called Ströme. Mario, the head of the band, is a friend of mine. He was the first one to use the Sinfonion, and there was a year where he played 100 live gigs a year. You know, they're really active.
Oh wow. Yeah,
and he's completely dependent on the Sinfonion to work. So they played concerts with 50,000 people there and stuff like that. So
it was a music first module, and I think like it was made with the intention of being a module for the making of music. And I know that seems like a weird thing to say because it seems obvious, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think every module that's in the Eurorack system is necessarily geared towards like making music.
No, of course not. It's a free country. You can make can make interesting noises. You can make everything. I just was filling a gap that was missing from my perspective. So
and obviously other people thought it was missing too, because it's now in a lot of people's cases, which is rad. And hopefully we can see Droid in more people's cases too, because I think once people understand what it is a little bit more, they'll start to see the potential, just like with the Sinfonion. One of our questions here is about starting your own company versus designing and partnering. Your company is called Der Mann mit der Maschine, or is that just your artist name?
It's both.
How many people do you have working with you on the Eurorack stuff?
Actually, I'm alone, but a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine started to help me with delivery of the modules. When you want to buy a Droid, you need to buy it from my shop or from Schneider's Laden. I'm not working with a distributor yet, so I'm shipping myself to the whole world.
Like people in other countries can buy it from Schneider's Laden, right? Like
yeah, and from here as well.
From there,
I've shipped to New Zealand, to Japan, to USA, Canada, and so on.
Yeah, I actually know another person here in Seattle that has a bunch of Droid stuff in their system. Nice.
Of course, we are looking for at least one retailer in USA to make it easier for US customers to buy the Droid.
What is Droid? We've talked about it a lot. We've talked about the Sinfonion a lot. Let's get a rundown of what this is. I think up to this point, I know I've done a VO at the beginning of this video explaining a little bit about what it is. We've been shown some performances throughout this that hopefully are giving you a little bit of taste of what's going on, but we haven't really gotten into the nitty-gritty of it. So why don't you give us a rundown of what this Droid ecosystem is currently?
Yeah, I call the Droid, it's a universal CV processor. So it can process CV, it can generate CV, or sometimes I say it can do everything except audio. So in your Eurorack system, it will solve every task that's not dealing with actual audio signals. So it can create envelopes, LFOs, it can quantize, it has sequencers, it can
do gates.
It has trigger sequencers, trigger delays, clock dividers, gate tools, slew limiters. It's an endless list of about, I think, 40 or 50, I call it circuits. Mm-hmm. Basically, the Droid is a kind of modular system for CV within a module.
Mm-hmm. These things, it's not like Disting or Ornament and Crime, It's something that you actually decide what you want each jack and input and output and knob and button to do. Tell us a little bit about how the circuits are written, like they exist in code, and you write them into a file or package that is sent to the module.
You know, I have a long experience with text files because I'm a Linux expert. I'm working with text files for my whole life. You can edit text files, I think, for 50 years now. And I'm sure that within the next 50 years, we will also able to write text files. It was a design principle for the Droid. There's no external software necessary for configuring what's going on there. So
would you call the writing stuff for is it a markup language? What would you most closely align it to in terms of how the structure of its code?
I mean some people say programming, but I'm a programmer, so it's definitely not programming. Basically, you do the same decisions like you do in a real modular patch. You connect inputs and outputs, and you turn knobs. And now the third thing is that you screw modules into your rack. So that's the first thing in the Droid patch is you decide what modules, I call it circuits, what circuits you want to use. I call it circuits just in order to avoid confusion with the actual module. So, but it's the same. You know, a circuit is kind of a virtual module. So you decide what circuits you want to use, then you connect the circuits with kind of patch cables with each other and with the actual physical jacks of the Droid. And then you set parameters like turning knobs, and that's it.
You have a lot of really fantastic tutorials on your YouTube already for this product that I think people should check out in regards. Like, you're very thorough in going through the some of the methods of getting this up and running. So with that said, tell us a little bit about the current and maybe future, if you want to, modules that that are currently available for Droid. So we have the main one. We can start there. And tell us a little bit more about. Yeah, there we go. Nice.
Yeah, so we have the basic thing is this main one is called Droid Master. You can use that standalone. You don't need any other modules in order to make use of the Droid. So it has 8 CV inputs with these high precision 16-bit converters, and it has 8 CV outputs, and every jack ranges from -10 to +10 volt. So you can use the complete range of the modular system. Then you have these LED indicators. I've separated them from the jacks because you will end up with all jacks patched, and then you cannot see anything in between here.
That's very smart. Thank you. Just like a small design consideration that means a lot.
Yeah, and the Sinfonion, for example, the LEDs are next to the jacks, but when it's completely patched, you cannot see anything. So I like this much more. And then you have a slot for a micro SD card.
Is that how you get the circuits loaded onto it?
Yeah, basically on the SD card is just this little text file. I'm currently building a module which is called X7. It's this one here. It has 4 more gate outputs. It has 2 MIDI jacks. It's MIDI in and MIDI out.
Oh.
TRS. Then it has a USB jack which can either be used as MIDI or you can use it to access the SD card via it.
You just plug it right in and then you like mount it and write
it behaves like
on
a
your
USB
computer
stick.
to it.
Yeah, you just
awesome.
get access to the SD card. So it always is a MIDI device. It's not a host. You can connect your DAW, for example. You can connect a sequencer in your DAW and sequence something and so on. You cannot probably connect. If you connect a keyboard, it needs its own
a
power.
MIDI keyboard.
There's no power here, so that's the limitation.
Yeah. Still very cool.
But you have this TRS jack, so you have lots of MIDI. And the nice thing is, with the X7 together with the Droid, you can create a MIDI in and out device for Eurorack that's not limited to any number of tracks or whatever. You have completely flexible assignment, which CC controls you want to have, which clocks you want in and out.
So if you wanted to, you could technically set something up to take advantage of all of the really robust and interesting modulation options in your Eurorack system. And pass that on to MIDI devices or even DAW stuff if you wanted to.
Yeah, well, quite a lot of people are looking for these devices because they have the Sinfonion and they want the chord generator to play chord pads, for example, with an actual hardware synth. That's a way this module is perfect as a MIDI out device.
I know that seems weird to want, but like honestly, like one of the things I always am looking for in MIDI is something to generate stuff in the way that I can so easily with Eurorack, because it's a shame that like Eurorack's the only place right now that like I can do a lot of generative or a lot of really interesting like sequencing. So being able to take that out of the rack would be really nice.
Yeah, I think it's completely vice versa. Usually you would think you use MIDI to sequence all your nice voices in your modular. But people say, I use the modular just for generation of information. And the voice is played by hardware, and it makes completely sense. Because you have this intuitive playing interface of the Eurorack modules, and this whole inspiration the instrument gives you, and still you can make polyphonic patches with your hardware synths.
All right, tell us about the knobby dots. I know that on the system you sent over for me to play with, I've got two of those that work. One as a control over sort of the number of steps in a melodic sequence and the spread of the chords, and then the other one is it's a transposer and root note, but all in key. So basically, I can just push my sequence around with a knob. Which if anyone like here watching this doesn't understand how cool it is to be able to like push an entire Eurorack sequence around either via transposition or like the range of notes being played with like a knob and completely change the melodic structure of your thing on the fly. It's really, really cool. It's super, super, super cool.
I think if you train a bit, you can play a complete live set with just this Droid setup and a synth voice.
I plan on doing that actually. So I've been practicing a bunch with it. It works really, really well for a bunch of different genres, but right now I'm really digging it with sort of like deep melodic house stuff, because when you separate the pitch stuff from your gates and have control over both, I can do almost anything, and it just sounds good because all the stuff is harmonically related. It's really, really nice.
I mean, that is anyway a very, very good unique selling point of Eurorack, that you can separate gates from pitches, which is not found in MIDI and hard to implement there. And that's, I think, a key to make interesting music generative.
In case anyone watching this doesn't understand what we're talking about, the basic difference is that, like, in MIDI, when you press a note on a keyboard, you create a note on event, which in this case is the gate. And it basically just says, hey, play this note now. But in Eurorack, you can, and it changes the pitch usually at the same time. But in Eurorack, you don't have to do it at the same time. Which means that a single pitch generator can be spread along a number of voices. And depending on how you use the gates, you can create a really, really rich, interesting rhythm just from that. I know Mylar Melodies has talked a lot about this. I think he calls it the Stevio method. I'm not sure who actually is. I mean, I'm sure no one single person is credited with it, but from a live performance standpoint, having a single melodic center, like a place where the melodies are coming from, separate from your gate stuff, gives you a lot of really, really hands-on possibilities, and everything stays connected musically because of the way that the pitches are being generated. It's cool.
I think the Stevio method also includes precision adders.
I think the last video I watched of his that he was talking about that stuff, he was talking about using precision adders as well.
But let's answer your question with the controllers. Let's go back to these knobby things here. So the basic idea is that you can attach up to 16 of these controllers. They are wired together with simple ribbon cables.
On the back of the modules, and they don't require extra power. They just
they're powered
right
with the cable, because it's a pain in the ass to make it otherwise. I had it the first version. They were powered with their own cable, but you end up with dozens of cables. It's not. So here's just like a daisy chain of these controllers, up to 16, and then you have buttons and knobs. And this is a new one. It's called P10 because it has 10 knobs, 2 big ones and 8 small potentiometers.
And the patch that you sent over for me, the little potentiometers act as pitch choices for the 8 steps of the sequence.
What I tend to do is I label the buttons. I have these. There are stickers which are round and have 8 millimeters, and I stick them here. You can see that in my videos that all of my droids are the stickers, and then I write what it's about. That helps a lot. So if you play a droid patch for more than a couple of days, you make these stickers there, and then you're fine and won't forget anymore what it's about. So, so you can, and now you can assign any function you like to any button or knob, or you even can layer them. You can say this potentiometer has 2 functions, and it can switch here with a button.
Oh, I see. Awesome.
In the first version of your patch, I actually layered them to have 12 knobs instead of 6. Like 12 knobs, but it ended so complicated that I dropped it again. And I think what you can make with a patch anyway is so complex that you don't need.
It's really good. Yeah, I can't imagine adding more to it. Like it's nice and rich and simple at the same time.
Something I'm working on mentally for a couple of years now is this this controller here. By the time the video is released, it's close to production, I hope. And these are 4 faders, and the nice thing about is it's motor faders. These are real motor faders, as you might know from mixers, from mixing desks, from more expensive ones. This solves a problem that hasn't been solved yet in Eurorack. So sometimes you have complex modules, you want more functions on one knob. You know, the Stilson Hammer, for example, this multi-track sequencer, or the new Metropolis 2-track sequencer. You have 2 tracks, but you have just one set of faders. So if you switch over to the other track, the faders don't represent the actual sequence.
Oh
and
man, wait, I'm seeing it. Yeah, so in this sense, you can actually jump between 2 sets of faders, and they'll motorize themselves into the proper position.
As many functions as you like, or you can have, for example, you have 8 envelopes running here, and each envelope has ADSR, and then you select the envelope with the buttons, and the faders show you ADSR.
Okay, that's rad. There's something else about it too that you mentioned earlier that we cannot forget, and that is the haptic feedback.
Yeah, that's really. I'm not sure if anyone has tried it yet, but because in a mixing desk you don't need it. Via software, I can have the fader feel like it has small dents or notches. Basically, it's quantized. You know, you select a note from a scale, then the fader gets in a mode where you feel where the next note begins. It's like dents. It's dented.
So cool.
And that's not just fun. It really helps because, for example, in the Metropolis, if you change a note, it's 1 note or 2. You need the next round and listen to it. If you get the haptic feedback, you exactly can say, oh, I go 2 dents down, and then it's 2 notes down. So it absolutely makes sense.
That's really cool. I'm really excited about that one. I'm not completely unfamiliar with the design, but when we talked about it before, the switching between contexts and the motorized faders being part of that is not something that we talked about, and that is that's super cool. Like I've never seen that in Eurorack before. That's awesome.
I think I know why you haven't seen it, because it's complicated.
It's either, wait, let me guess. It's either really complicated or it's really expensive to try to do.
Okay, it is a bit expensive. I mean, the one of these faders costs about 20 euros if you buy it as a spare part. Yeah. But I don't mind. I want to make the best module possible. But the actual problem is it's very hard to find faders that fit into the case. It's really it's the one single fader that by 1 millimeter goes into this format from Eurorack. And the even bigger problem was the power supply, because
you mentioned that you're using some very, very big capacitors.
Yeah, when you read the specs, one fader can use up to 800 milliamperes. So 4 faders would be 2.5 ampere, which is more than a Eurorack power supply.
Yeah,
and it's just 4 faders.
I'm assuming though that's not how the power draw on that actually is at this point, considering what you're doing.
The actual idea is that the faders move very seldomly, very rarely, and just for a fraction of a second. And
so the capacitor is storing potential power for the faders to be able to move without having to draw current every single time they move.
It's like a battery. It's like a small battery that charges when you boot up the system. It needs about a couple of seconds to charge this. It's not really a battery, because batteries can age.
No, it's a gigantic capacitor.
It's a capacitor, so you have all the it's they're called super caps. And
it's funny because they look like batteries. They look like 18650s. They're burly. They're huge.
Yeah. But it works out pretty well. So
that's super. That's a really ingenious way to solve that problem. That's super cool.
So we and you have an upper limit how much currency this draws from your power supply. I think it's about 300 of 350 milliamperes. So it's a quite usual
power draw for a module.
Power draw for a module, for a bigger module. So that's completely fine.
So you think if everything goes, and I'm going to knock on wood, if everything goes correctly around the time Super Booth is around here, you'll probably be about ready to ship on those.
I'm not
sure
going to
hold you to that.
I will ship them at the booth, but I will show them at the booth. You can come over.
Okay, cool.
You can try them out. You can feel them. With a bit of luck, we can order them, and I hope I will ship them a couple of weeks later.
Well, everybody keep an eye out for coverage on this on Super Booth. I don't think I will be there. I wish I could, but we might get another video of Nick Bat being lost in Super Booth for 10 hours. That was amazing. Okay. How are you using Droid in your live system? Because, I mean, as we might expect from the creator of the ecosystem, Droid plays a huge part in your rack. And if anyone has been paying attention as we've been playing these videos, and I will cut into one now, your Droid use in the rack is extensive. So give us a little rundown of how that is working for you in the patch.
There are two ways how you can use the droid. The one way is that you use it as a toolkit, as a Swiss Army knife. I need a slew limiter here. I need a precision adder there, an envelope there, just little things, a clock divider maybe. You can use that with, you can solve these problems with external modules, as I did before. And you need so many modules, you know.
Yeah.
A logic gate here because you need an OR combination of two signals. Then I need a clock divider here and a multiplier here, and so on and so on and so on. So that's the one way to use the droid, is to solve all these small problems in a very efficient way.
Sort of the disting approach, but customizable in that, like, you literally choose what you want.
Yeah, and you can stuff so many functionality in one droid because you have these 8 inputs and 8 outputs. With the G8 expander, we have 24 jacks, just 12 HP. So it's really very, very condensed. So that's the one way you can use the droid, and I use it at many places that way. The other way is that, like the patch I've sent you, you can use the droid to create the actual music, to make more complex things. As a more fully realized sort of congruent system that's working together. Yeah, you can create a complete melody generation playing system with a user interface where you can improvise and play and make more complex things. That's the second application, and I use both of them. For example, complex things I do, I have dropped out the Circlon for making drum sequences as a trigger sequencer. So I sequence 5 different voices, a bass drum, snare drum, hi-hats, the claps, and I call it a clave, rhythmic instrument with a Swayman Res 4. And the droid makes a combination of a classical trigger sequencer, where you press a button for a beat, algorithmic playing like the Turing machine, where you say, I want some randomness, or some repeated randomness, some nicely controllable randomness.
So this is something that people can actually, if they get a droid system, this is something they can grab from the library.
Yeah, of course. They're just
awesome.
They're examples, and of course, probably you want. I ever made a video about it, and the patch from the video is online. You want 4 on the floor, you press the 4 buttons, so you get the 4 on the floor groove. But you also can turn one knob, and then the groove changes, or you get more beats. You know, in a live situation, I just need to turn one knob a bit to the right, and the beat gets more dense. To get some variation. And I don't care what beats there are. I just wanted to make more.
You want the density.
Density.
Yeah. That's a really, really interesting way of doing it, and very smart. I've talked with people a lot about this and the way that we can move through live music in not just modular, but everything, but modular especially. What do we get to change to actually increase energy? Well, density is a really, really big one of them. Like sparse, sparse is, I guess, not here. So more sparse, different energy. More dense, different energy. And one control over that in your drums is really, really important.
I mean, I play a complete orchestra. If you play modular, most times you play alone, or maybe just as 2.
Yep.
You need to play so many instruments to make the music interesting. You cannot have attention to one single fucking note. So sometimes you want a specific note here because it's important for your groove, and sometimes you just want anything. You just need more energy.
I think one of the things that I love about this, and what it sounds like this particular setup that you created helps you do, is also riff off yourself. You know, and I don't know how much of this is sort of like true to jazz, but as people who are completely responsible for every event happening in our system that's going out through maybe some large speakers to a group of people, being able to have the system sort of surprise us in a controlled way, so that then we can groove off of that, is fun as hell. It's so cool. And yeah, like you said, I think a little bit earlier, like adding that little bit of randomness to your Sinfonion thing, so that like it's not just playing back the same sequence over and over again. I mean, there's nothing wrong necessarily with that like highly repetitive kind of banging stuff, but you know, that's not always what we want to do. We want to be inspired by what's happening in our rack at the same time.
But I like what you said. You want to get surprised by your instrument, but in a controlled way.
Within a controlled setting, yeah.
Yeah,
it's like if you were playing with other musicians and one of them did something really cool, you'd want to be able to riff off that. But you don't want to play with a bunch of musicians who are like just all playing like 4 different songs at the same time. You know, like we want to agree on what we're doing here.
and what I'm also aiming at is a kind of complete and total improvisation. You know, when I made my first live gig with Modular, I was very excited and everything, and I had prepared lots of songs. And I had stored that songs in the Circlone sequencer, and then every couple of minutes I started the next song, and song. It was too much. It was like pre-scripted. There was no freedom in it. And after playing more and more live gigs, and after transforming my instrument in the state I have now, when I play a live gig, I just prepare the first groove, basically, just the first couple of seconds. I want to start with a certain groove because then I feel comfortable that something's up and running, which sounds cool. Then we see how where the journey goes. And
I've talked with people a bunch about this, and when they ask me how live sets can be prepared for modular, and like I tell them, like, come up with some tent poles, like the things like that are like, if you have any major points in your set you want to hit, like from a conceptual level, make those available to you. But everything else, you should have fun with it. Like every single thing that I've done in modular when I'm moving from starting off to now doing more like actual live music and live sets is more aligned with what you're talking about. I'm going to come up with the core idea of what this set can do, and I'm going to practice around that.
Yes.
But I want it to be improvised because that's what's interesting to me. But I also want to have like as much control over it as possible.
Yes.
Within reason. It's wonderful. I cannot imagine doing this, what we're talking about right now, without modular. And for all of its faults and all of its cost, that's an amazing thing. Like it's really, really cool that we're able to do this.
Basically, the Droid is a module, and the Sinfonion, these modules help me to play in that style. They make it possible. I free myself more and more of these pre-scripted, of these songs and these sequences. I'm using small sequences, but I gain so much freedom.
One of the things I noticed when I got the Droid modules from you was a little card that had a QR code to scan to get into the Discord surrounding the Droid ecosystem. So there's a community aspect to it. Tell me a little bit about how the community stuff works. And I'm assuming that people are, talking with you about ideas and also sharing circuit and patch ideas in there. Is there anything more that you'd like to talk about in that respect?
That's the idea. So there's a community on Discord, and so people meet there, exchange patch ideas. It's also for me interesting if I have a new firmware version of the Droid with new functions. Then I can upload a beta version. Some people test it, give me feedback. It's very easy to reach out to me by that way. If there are questions nobody can solve, then obviously either the manual is bad or the software has a bug, then we can clarify it. Most important for me, it's fun. It's fun to get in contact with the people using my stuff. That's also a reason why I like to sell the modules directly, because I get in touch with the people. We discuss how to ship it to New Zealand or whatever, and that's fun for me.
A direct connection with the community and having a place where people can talk about this stuff is very much in line with the spirit of the Droid system. I think that's really, really cool, and I think it's something that people can look forward to if they decide to jump in.
Yeah, of course. There are already some users which are really, really deep into it and can answer all questions. Also, the fact that the Droid patches are basically text files makes them very easy to talk about.
To share, and yeah, exactly, yeah.
Share them.
Super easy.
You can just post a snippet from such a patch and ask a question, or post an idea or something. It's really very, very easy to communicate.
One of the things that I have been thinking about with this system is that if you're like stuck at work, let's just use that as an example. And you're like, I have an idea for a patch. A lot of the times you'd have to wait until you get home to try it out, but you could theoretically just like sneak a little time and like program up your Droid patch to be ready for you when you get home.
Yes, you can
and
do
I think that's really, really cool.
I understand the people that don't like that they need to write the text file on the SD card and put it out in the Droid and so on. That's the reason why I've built this X7 expander, so that you have direct access. But I think there are many cases where it's easier to not need an actual USB cable to your modular system.
We went over like a little bit with the motorized fader thing. Is the P10, the one with all the knobs, is that currently shipping?
Just today, I've created the first batch.
Awesome.
So at the time the video comes out, I think at least at the Super Booth it will be shipped. The module as such is finished, but you need a firmware update of the Droid Master that it knows about the P10 and its features.
And can address it. Yeah.
And the summer is very dense at the preparation for the super booth, so I'm not sure if it's pre or post booth, but
so besides that and the motorized fader thing, is there anything else that you have mulling around in your head that you expect to maybe try for the Droid ecosystem, if you can talk about it, like any fun things that you have planned?
There are certain stages. The first stage is that you have a rough idea, and when I call it a plan, it's something that will definitely happen. So
okay.
in the idea stage are different things. For example, one thing I'm already thinking about a couple of years is having a modular mixer. There are certain mixers. For example, I use the WMD mixer, which is, I think, the best Eurorack mixer currently.
That is the Cadillac, and there's a reason why it's always sold out everywhere.
But sometimes it's too big, sometimes it's too small, sometimes it has not enough stereo channels. Then
right.
There's one drawback that I'm really missing in all Eurorack mixers, and that is that I want 2 auxiliary channels at the same time.
Yes,
and none of the mixers
stereo,
can do it.
obviously.
In stereo,
like
also in stereo. I want a delay and I want a reverb. I think that's pretty basic.
For anyone that's not familiar with just like the basic concept of how mixers work, like the reason that I bought, for instance, the Mackie 1202, which is like just a really standard analog mixer, is that it has 2 stereo accents. So I can like plug in 2 effects, like the Microcosm or the Zoya, and any channel on there, I can then send that signal to those in a certain amount. It just opens up the ability to create space effects or any kind of effects very easily and share them amongst all your channels.
But then you need a table for the mixer, and I play this vertical rack, which is on a stand on its own. Then I would need an additional table.
You don't want to have to like reach over and like play with the mixer as well.
And then you need all these converters from modular level to line level and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's not really a good option for me. I want the mixing to be done in the Eurorack, and so I've come up with an idea recently. Modular mixer that's controlled by the Droid. So the mixing modules, the mixing channel strips would basically just consist of jacks and VCAs, and you would have the Droid for controlling, and then you can use the motor faders in order to make a motor faderized modular mixer, maybe. And maybe I try such a thing with sequencer. There are 2 types of sequencers. One are the performance sequencers like Metropolis, really hands-on, but they are very limited functionality. So if you want to play a larger live gig, if you need a collection of melody snippets to bring in, it's hard to do that with these small sequencers. And then there are the complex sequencers like the Circlon, where the waiting list is about 1.5 a year or something, or other sequencers, external ones. And you can program anything, but it's not good for live improvisation. It's too much programming and not playing. I want to play, I don't want to program. So maybe with the use of the motor faders, it's possible to make both in one module. So you have really hands-on, but can at the end make a complex sequencer.
That's super, super cool. I'm not expecting it anytime soon, but I can't wait to see what you come up with. Tell us about your new multiples.
Do you see them here? I mean, a multiple is the most basic, plain vanilla module that you can imagine.
I have one here too.
Yeah, I gave one to you, yeah.
We have jumpers on the back.
Yeah, I have jumpers. So the first thing, I wanted a multiple with 9 jacks instead of 8, just because it allows 3-3-3 combinations. So this multiple can be converted into 3 different multiples. As you can see here, you can have a multiple with 9 connected jacks. Here you have 3, 3, and 3. And here we have 4 and 5. And the nice thing is that you can, if you buy such a multiple, you get an additional faceplate, and each faceplate has 2 sides, so you can turn it around. And with the jumpers on the back side, you see the small symbols here. Then you can say, I want, if all 3, it's 9 jacks connected, so you can get all these configurations by changing the jumpers. Turn on the faceplate, and then you see what's actually going on. Because if you have a larger system, you won't remember which of the multiples is connected and which is not.
Exactly. Yeah, keeping track of all the spaghetti is hard to do sometimes.
And then the nicest idea that if you have 2 of these, there's a 4th side showing A, B, C, D. You take 2 of these, remove the jumpers, then you take such a Droid cable and connect them, and by that way you basically create a CV bus.
I didn't know that.
You can put them at different positions in your rack, and then you have a bus with A is 3 jacks.
Are you kidding me? That's awesome.
BCD, so you have 4 lanes in this bus with different types of jacks, different numbers.
That's awesome.
So
that's super
like
cool.
Clock distribution reset. Sometimes you need clock here and there and everywhere. So this is the idea behind it.
usually there's a mess of cables coming out of there and going, like everywhere in the system. So this actually allows me to pass that kind of like utilitarian data around. Mathias, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us here. I think this video has been running as a premiere, so hopefully you've been here chatting with us. I'm not 100% sure. We'll know what the future is when that happens. But we will have a full set of links in the video description to everything that we've talked about and more here. You will be at Superbooth, so anyone that is in that area, stop by Superbooth and say hi to Mathias and check out the Droid stuff and whatever else he decides to bring there. But yeah, thank you so much. This was a pleasure, and I just really enjoyed talking to you.
So thanks for having me in your show. It was great fun, and I hope we meet sometime at Superbooth or at the concert or wherever in real. So
I hope so too. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you later. Hey, thanks for joining us for this talk with Mathias Kettner of Der Mann mit der Maschine. I hope this was fun for you. Be sure to check all the links in the video description to places where you can check out Droid for yourself. You can check out all the really awesome tutorials that Mathias has done on Droid, and probably a lot more. Again, thanks for watching. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording, and I hope you have a wonderful day.